mountains, but apparently it is. We welcome you back to the Patrick Netherton Show right here on 1130 The Tiger. Pleased to welcome in one of the new voices. He's long been a voice of the ACC, but he's one of the new voices on the new ACC Network, and a good friend, and the voice of the hated Atlanta Falcons. He is Wes Durham. Wes, my friend, how are you, man?
I'm good, Patrick. Nice to be with you.
Good to have you, man. So, you got the ACC Network kicked off. Tell us about how it's been in the early goings.
It's been a lot of fun. It's kind of been fast and furious, a little like drinking through the fire hose deal. The parts that I'm involved with, obviously the morning show with Mark Packer is one thing, and then the project of doing games is another. So I get to shift gears a lot during the week. But, we've got great leadership at the front end on this, and a lot of people did a lot of really hard work on the way in the front door here. And by the time Packer and I, joined the team, so to speak, last March, really it was just about what we were going to do in the mornings, and then obviously we get started with games this weekend. But I think, for the ACC, it's a huge step. But really probably, Patrick, for me, the difference maker for the ACC at launch is that each institution has their own production facility. And this is the first network launched by ESPN or Fox or whoever, where each of the member institutions has a production facility. Basically, the average installation price is somewhere about $10 million.
Yeah.
And so all 15 schools have some facility in that neighborhood that is going to be very valuable. In fact, in the 2 days that we've done shows, we've now hit the trigger point on just about every one of those operations. So that's been good for us, and we've kind of test drove the facilities, and it's been good, and I think it's going to be really good once we kind of get this plane to cruising altitude and start going forward here.
Yeah, well, it's easy to talk to a coach when all he has to do is just walk to whatever room their studio is, and you're already connected satellite-wise, and you can talk to whoever you want to.
Yeah, it does make a big difference. There's no question about that. I mean, we had Dino Babers this morning live. We had, the other day we had Tony Bennett. We've had Steve Adazio. We've had a variety of coaches from baseball and basketball. Mike Bray was with us this morning from Notre Dame. So, I mean, yeah, you can move around pretty quick if you want to. And as we start drilling down into each week, with football and obviously in the wintertime when basketball starts, there'll be facilities that will be very, very helpful in what Mark and I are trying to do in the morning for 3 hours for sure.
So what is your show, you and Packer? I mean, obviously, I know Packer from SiriusXM. I've known you forever.
Right.
What do you consider, or do you yet have an identity for what your show is?
Well, I think we were pretty honest when we started on SiriusXM on their ACC channel about 18 months ago that we just didn't want to do a footprint show. In other words, we weren't, because I grew up in North Carolina, had worked in Georgia for 18 years, and obviously was in television. We just weren't going to play to, let's say the 4 schools in North Carolina, the 2 in Virginia, and the 1 in South Carolina, because that's, quite frankly, in football, that's just half the league. Yeah. So really what we've done is we've tried to make a concerted effort to do something about every school and every show. And that's helped us because it keeps us on task, and we've actually learned a lot. I mean, we found, common bond with Heather Light, the athletic director at Pitt, the job she's doing, Martin Jarman at Boston College. These are relatively younger athletic administrators who are going through developing not just a specific program, Patrick, but they're developing their entire department. So that's been good. Blake James at Miami has been very good with his time. I mean, it's interesting storytelling when you can find the interesting stories. In the ACC, we were fortunate to have the #1 women's amateur golfer this past year, Jennifer Kupcho, who won the Augusta Women's National. And, those type things are important, and if you can do them on radio and then ultimately transfer them to TV, as we're trying to do, it really makes for entertaining storytelling. And that's kind of what we're in for at the end. Now, we have fun and cut up, and we can deep dive history with the best of them when it comes to the ACC. But our show, which originates out of Packer's basement now, I mean, you can laugh at, but ESPN went in and did a phenomenal job kind of retroing his basement and making it accessible for us to do a show. And I remember when you guys used to do Brando's out of strip mall, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've upgraded to being in a basement, or downgraded. Pac likes to say we've gone from Wayne's World to 4K, and that's probably pretty true in some respects. But it's been good. And I think our show is going to be comprehensive. We're going to be entertaining, I hope, and at the same time have a few laughs and kind of get you ready for, each day in the ACC with guests and things like that.
Do you have to abide by the old rules that Rodgers had to abide by when he went to Tim Brando's office to do the show? That you have to take your shoes off, or they're house rules that you have to follow to go to Packers' house?
No. I
That's
just
good.
pull down behind the house and get out and walk through the French doors that lead into the basement.
Oh.
In fact, we've been doing pre-production and rehearsals. We've probably done 11 shows out of there, and I've gone upstairs maybe one time to get a cup of coffee, and that's it. And his wife must be telling me something because she brought a Keurig machine downstairs, so I don't even have to go upstairs anymore. So
you're not allowed in the house.
Apparently, I'm not allowed to go upstairs.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Wes Durham from the ACC Network and Atlanta Falcons. All right, Wes, what did you take away from Miami and Florida?
Well, it wasn't very pretty, was it?
No, it was week one.
Yeah, but what were we? Was anybody expecting that thing to be spit shined and polished right out of the gate? That just wasn't going to happen.
The over/under was 46, so no, I don't think anyone was expecting anything beautiful.
Yeah, so look, I think both teams certainly have room to grow. I give Miami a lot of credit. I thought Jarren Williams to be sacked 10 times and hit probably another 7 or 8. I thought he played admirably. To be honest, he threw for the most part fairly accurate football. The thing I would be concerned about if I'm a Miami fan today, Patrick, is I didn't run the ball very efficiently north and south out of a conventional formation. The only time they really had success running the ball was on the perimeter and then cutting it outside. And to be honest, the only time they ever got anything in the middle was when they were running stuff with Wildcat with DJ Dallas. That would be my real concern with Miami, because unfortunately for Hurricane fans, that's a sign of what happened a year ago when they couldn't run the ball. And it's ironic the ACC has 2 schools in the state of Florida, and the litmus test for both, in my opinion, is their ability to run the ball. So, we'll see what happens, but I think Miami's still a quality team. I think defensively they're really good. If I'm a Florida fan, I'm okay with what's happened. Certainly winning the game. I would be concerned that my quarterback is still trying to make too many plays on his own and throwing ill-advised balls. I would be more concerned about Florida offensively than I am defensively at this juncture.
Sure. first and goal turnovers and late in the game when you're trying to preserve the lead, turnovers on bad plays. That's not what you want out of your starting QB. And Dan Mullen typically has had a reputation as being a good QB guru, but so far I haven't seen much out of Felipe Franks. Wes, as you break down the ACC as a whole, obviously Clemson. Everyone knows Clemson. They're at the top. But who are the challengers to Clemson in your mind? Because it does seem like it's kind of Clemson's the bully right now, and can anyone else step to their level?
Well, I think, a lot of us in college football have to answer that question, right, Patrick?
Nationally.
I think you probably got one in the SEC, and a lot of people, I'm sure, want LSU to be the team that challenges Alabama. And to be honest with you, I think it's going to be interesting to see, in many respects, how all this kind of works together. And I'm intrigued, to be honest with you, about Syracuse and Virginia in the ACC in particular. Now, I'll be the first to admit that the ACC will be a better league nationally if Florida State, Miami, and Virginia Tech are good. Obviously they're household brands, right? If the Mac Brown story germinates in Chapel Hill and he wins 7 or 8 games, that'll be good for ACC football. But in all honesty, Syracuse and Virginia, to me, are 2 teams that are kind of built to challenge. Now, I don't know if Virginia will get there. Their schedule is favorable, but quite frankly, they don't see Clemson in the regular season. The only way they see them would be in the title game. Syracuse is a lot. If you think Syracuse is just about tempo, you're making a mistake. They're pretty good defensively. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if offensively you see some numbers and go, well, they're not that flashy on offense.
Well, they've lost a lot.
Well, they have, but they've also, they're breaking in a quarterback who relies on throwing the ball, not thrill-seeking like Eric Dungy did. Now, I happen to think, and Dino Babers told me this morning, he said, you're right, we have more depth, but we don't have depth that I know is explosive yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think he's kind of, bluffing a little bit, because I think he does have explosive depth, and I think he's got more depth than he's ever had. Now, the question at Syracuse is, can they protect DeVito with some shuffling in the offensive line? So, but Syracuse, to me, is the team that has a chance. Virginia has a big ball game Saturday with Pittsburgh. That's the team obviously won the Coastal a year ago. It's a place that Virginia struggled. So can the Cavaliers get off to a good start? If so, I think that's good for Virginia. I'd like to see, what Virginia Tech and BC. By the way, that'll be a street fight, by the way, Virginia Tech and Boston College.
Yeah.
So I think the league has a chance to be very good. Will it be more than Clemson? A lot of people nationally may not see that. I see where it can be. But you and I both know this referendum that we have in college football tends to go day to day and damn near week to week. So I think actually in some ways that's the entertaining aspect of the business we're in right now.
Talking to Wes Durham, one of the voices on the ACC Network and the voice of the Atlanta Falcons. Wes, by the way, I did you see the Whit Babcock AD for Virginia Tech when I don't know, just some random person on Twitter asked if Justin Fuente was on the hot seat? And he didn't at anybody, he didn't tag anyone in there. He just said, is Justin Fuente on the hot seat? We'll discuss. It was some radio host, and Whit Babcock just responded to him on Twitter and said no. I'm like, that's kind of what I like in an athletic director, to be honest with you. You don't necessarily want him engaging like that, but Whit's a different guy. You know that he's not afraid to get out there and respond to some of these folks. I loved it. I thought it was great.
No, he is. Yeah, he's a guy who definitely plays his cards open to the table, no question. And I think, look, it was a subpar season at Virginia Tech, but I'm just not sure they can be as hurt as they were a year ago. Okay, Now I guess it's possible, but that really derailed their season. And in particular, two big injuries. The one to Josh Jackson certainly did it offensively. But I'll be honest with you, the curious part about that football team too, Patrick, they got to run the ball better. They don't run the ball better, they're going to be in trouble again. And so now you start to see where I'm going with this. There are 3 or 4 teams that we got questions about. Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech. Isn't it funny how they're all central on whether they can run the ball?
Yeah.
And in reality, I think those are big questions. Offensive line play is going to be something very interesting. And you know what? Here's the thing nobody's talking about nationally. Clemson is doing some restructuring now. They're very good. Gage Cervenka is outstanding in the offensive line. But when you lose Mitch Hyatt that took the last 7,000 snaps at Clemson, he took snaps when Danny Ford was the coach.
Right.
So, you lose a guy like that, that's a big loss. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how offensive line play in this league goes in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and let's not forget they also lost 3 first-round defensive linemen. So there's,
Yeah, but I
know they're going to reload. I know, but that's still that's a big loss.
Let me tell you, reload. They played the next wave last year.
Yeah.
They played. Here's the other thing about Clemson doesn't get discussed much. They played 80 guys in double-figure games last year.
Amazing. That's great.
It is, and it leaves them. Dabo, Hims, and Hawes, there's 80 guys on his roster are freshmen and sophomores. And I said, but yeah, the sophomores played double-figure games.
Right.
And he looks at me kind of like, yeah, you don't need to be advertising that. But Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry, these are guys that are ready to ride, and they played 10 games last year. Of their 15, and substantial downs. So I think Clemson defensively is going to be interesting. The thing that I would tell you about Clemson, and this is the scary part for everybody else, they may have more thump offensively this year than they did last year.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly going to be a little bit more settled QB debate this year, that's for sure. Wes, let's switch over to the NFL just briefly. The voice of the Atlanta Falcons. What's camp been like? What's the feeling? I would imagine offensively with Julio and Ridley and Matt Ryan. It feels like offensively the Falcons are good. And what's the new coordinator? How's everyone looking over there?
Well, everybody. They haven't won a game in the preseason of the 4 they've played. They finished in Jacksonville on Thursday night. Patrick Julio Jones has not played a preseason snap. Neither has Deion Jones, the linebacker. Don't expect either to play Thursday night.
No.
So the first time we'll see him will be out of the box at Minnesota in week 1. You know what? They're really coming back from bad injuries that just derailed all their entire season a year ago, especially up the middle on defense. And I think, to be honest with you, they're going to have to be pretty slick opening week. Their schedule's difficult, but I think they've had a pretty good preseason. But so much gets made out of numbers and things like that. Ryan has looked very good. It's been good to get Devontae Freeman back on the field and see kind of where he is. And I'm excited about what they can be on offense, but they're going to have to protect Ryan a little better. They spent 2 first-round picks on a right guard and Chris Lindstrom, who is going to start. The right tackle, Caleb McGarry, is back on the field this week. So, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also one of those realists that say I know everything runs through New Orleans at this point in the NFC South, even though I think the division, again, will be really, really good.
Absolutely. Last two things for you. A, what's your since you're one of the couple of guys that do college games on Saturdays and NFL games on Sundays. Do you have a crazy trip this year that you already have on the schedule that you know about?
Well, fortunately for me, when I signed the agreement to come to work for the ACC Network and ESPN, they agreed to give me 12 noon games on Saturday.
Oh, very good.
So I'm not having to – now, the Falcons do play in Arizona, and they play in December, but that's after the college regular season is over. So the moves for me are going to be not as – well, I say not as strenuous, and, of course, I'll get the one – I'm cursing myself there.
Right,
but,
right.
Right now, on paper, they don't look to be as taxing. In other words, I don't have a night game in Charlottesville and have to end up in Seattle.
Right.
So that's I've had a couple, and but now this is year 16 doing Saturdays and Sundays, and God bless, I'm just been fortunate to get out to be able to do this for a long time, Patrick, and it's still a lot of fun to be able to kind of chase the college and the NFL game. But fortunately, knock on wood, right now, nothing too crazy is on the map so far.
That's good. You're living the dream. Last thing for you, now that the ACC Network is in, you're starting to establish yourselves. Do you feel like you and Packer need to challenge Peter Burns and Dari Noka in some sort of a arm wrestling contest or some feats of strength to try to come in and show that the new guy is ready to compete?
No, Peter and Chris Doring on the SEC's SiriusXM channel, they're too busy pulling for us and our success because they think if an ACC morning show takes off, that'll certainly mean that Greg Sankey will want one on his network too. So Peter's an ally at this point.
Yeah.
Dari's such a good guy.
Oh, so great.
And
They're all such
I've
good
relocated here to the Charlotte area, and we've been able to get to know some of those guys a little better than I had in the past. And so, it's interesting. There's some pretty interesting lines that get drawn in college athletics, but when you're involved in these networks, you want everybody to succeed.
That's right. It makes everyone better. I love all of you guys. Y'all are all phenomenal, and I love the fact that y'all are willing to come on the show and chat and be friends, and that's awesome. I love it, man. And I need to make I have another reason to make a trip to Charlotte at some point. I gotta make that happen. Wes, you're the best, my friend. Thank you so much, and best. Oh, what's your first game, by the way?
NC State, East Carolina on Saturday at noon.
There you go on the ACC Network. Can't wait, brother. Much appreciated.
You bet. Take care.
All right, Wes Durham, one of the voices of the ACC Network, does a morning show with Mark Packer